It's like we need to be doing this in this world right now, particularly when all the ground seems to be shifting and, all the news is not good. We've got to
Yeah.
find that still quiet space through which we can navigate life.
Hi, I'm Renee Moorefield, CEO of Wisdom Works. And in this edition of the Be Well, Lead Well newsletter for thriving leadership, I am joined by my dear friend and colleague, Dave Schrader from Leadership Circle. Dave shared with me a metaphor that I think many of us can relate to, the feeling that we're a cork bobbing in a turbulent sea. In our conversation, Dave offered powerful ways leaders can move beyond staying afloat. One is by finding your place to stand. This means building an inner security that lets you witness change without being overtaken by it. It also means connecting with something larger than yourself so that your sense of self isn't defined by your shifting circumstances. And I don't know anyone who is not dealing with shifting circumstances. We also explore the idea that you are more than your local address. You're more than your name, your role, or any way you identify. And when you tap into that bigger sense of self, you can respond to complexities with greater clarity instead of reactivity. One of my favorite takeaways from my conversation with Dave was to find your practice and practice your practice. So, in the newsletter, I share some practical ways to do that, from starting your day with a clear intention, to pausing for resets throughout the day, to ending the day with rituals that restore you, to spending time in nature, and a host of others. The heart of the message from this newsletter is simple. Your well being isn't a trade off for your leadership, it's the foundation of it. And when we thrive, we create the conditions for others to thrive too. I really hope you enjoy my conversation with Dave. It is always, always, always such a treat to spend time with you, Dave. We've known each other now for a few years. We've been kind of doing this
Mhm.
each other's lives, and every time I feel like it's such a gift. So I really appreciate you agreeing to have this conversation with me. We've been interviewing people around thriving leadership around the globe, and especially during this time of, as you said, shifting sands, real disruption and change in a way that feels so profound to many people. Um, I want to ask you some questions about what do you think's going on in the world? What do you think's going on in the world, and what does it mean to thrive in the here and now and to create a better world for everybody?
Mhm.
Before I do that, though, I'd love to know a little bit about your backstory and how you came to do the work you do today.
Well, I think I'll start with something that can probably link us to the conversation that's more explicit about the world now. I have always been hungry to understand the deeper meaning behind things. Like I can remember being a kid and always being very curious about why this, why that,
Mhm.
how come this and not that. That ultimate question that philosophers ask, which is why is there something rather than nothing? But I was asking it in all kinds of different ways as a kid. And then when I got into college and I started on a journey of faith that had me pointing in one particular direction around those questions and finding some answers that turned out to be pretty easy answers,
Yeah.
pat buttoned up answers, and they satisfied for a little while. But in the midst of my own questioning, I wanted to also do something that involved wilderness education and taking people into the woods and into the mountains and onto the rocks and into the caves and on the rivers. And basically, I just loved guiding wilderness trips. After I got out of college, that was part of what I did. That was a way I worked with students on the campuses that I was working on, student leaders,
Hmm.
and finding out that, oh my gosh, there's a whole thing called experiential education. And
Hmm.
it's being intentional about using experience to catalyze insight, right? So, um, we were good. Me and the team of folks who did this were good at what we did, but we didn't have a whole lot of underlying theory. So After a while, I went back and got a master's in experiential education so that I would know how to do design work really well. And in that process, I started shifting from taking groups into the wilderness and doing more sort of standard ropes course, high and low level initiatives with them. And that led to working with managers. My undergrad was in business. And so I sort of started to circle into what's the business conversation around team effectiveness. And that then led me to do my doctorate at Case because I met some folks doing team building stuff who were associated with the department at Case Western.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, come on, do your PhD here. So I was like, okay. And yeah, not a small undertaking, 7 years, as you know, worth of stuff. Incredible growth. Loved it. And got to meet with all these luminaries in the field. And that then kind of took me into delivering work in a more corporate kind of a venue, resorts and hotels and that kind of thing. Always working with leaders to help them not only figure out how to lead more effectively, but ask the big why behind why lead at all.
Mm-hmm.
Why are you even choosing to do the work you're doing? And is it meaningful to you? Is it meaningful enough now that when you are 90 years old and you're sitting on your rocking chair on your front porch with a blanket over your lap and a nurse serving you tea, and you're looking back over your life, you will say, man, am I glad I used my time when I was in my 30s, 40s, 50s to do that? That was worth my life. Like, is it that meaningful? And so that's been the underlying question for me. So leadership development for me has been as, oh goodness, what's the guy's from University of Cincinnati, Warren Bennis. As Warren Bennis said, that leadership development or becoming a great leader is just a surrogate for becoming a great human. And I truly still believe that, which is why leadership development can be leadership development in a narrow bandwidth because it gets the budget you need, et cetera, et cetera. But you can lead from any seat.
Yeah.
And so that's my take on it. And then, as I got to understand vertical development, that put a much finer sort of pathway onto this process of discovering meaning and how meaning changes at every stage of our meaning making capabilities evolve,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and so that to me is also what would characterize and recharacterize our understanding of thriving.
Mm-hmm.
Vertical development, as you and I have already talked, has such a big influence on what we determine is thriving.
Yeah.
So that's been a journey for me. I've been in and out of various consulting firms on my own many times, and now, still with Leadership Circle after 12 years.
Yeah.
13.
I actually really appreciate hearing this version because you and I've talked about histories before and past before, and we know a little about each other. We've worked together. We've been in and out of each other's lives for a while now, but I hadn't heard this version of the story. And what I'm really appreciating is that from a kid, you already were in this place of seeking and discovering and wanting to understand the mystery of all. And the rest of life, it sounds like, has been an exploration of that with further distinctions and further knowledge and understanding wisdom systems and bringing more nuance to it, but the fundamental core is the same.
I have never been able to get enough. I've never been able to get enough. I'm so hungry for that of wisdom, structure, learning. Just since the very beginning.
Any leaders we work with, and I know you work with as well, that aren't really connected yet into this deeper why. And I don't mean that as a surface level purpose. I don't mean the small why. I mean the deeper search for why are we here? What is our vital work to do? who do we want to be? Who do we want to become? Who do we want to be for each other? These are not simple questions. These are some questions of why we exist. And I think they're very up for us. At least they're very up for me, and all the people I'm talking to are really questioning that right now.
And everything follows from that.
Yeah.
Oh, I wouldn't go as far as whoever it was who said the unexamined life is not worth living. It is certainly worth living, and there are different levels of examination and different fields of examine. But if you're clear about who you are and why you're here and what is our work to do, then everything after that gets its relative place.
Right.
So you might wake up one day and go, oh my gosh. So that's why I think it's so important for leaders to because it gives them something from which vision can grow.
Wow.
And so, yeah, you're right. I've always had wonder and awe built into the fabric of my being.
Yeah, I really connect with you on that. And you know that's a whole nother conversation, but I really, that's just wonder and awe sorts of, I just think about it's a main line into the system. Wonder and awe is just a main line for me into physical energy, creativity, and then a sense of oneness. So at every level.
Everything we need to know about life, you can find the answers in one leaf off of a tree.
Yeah.
If you look at it the right way, right? I mean, that's the kind of thing that just is like
mind blowing. Yeah. So in the middle of all of our disruptiveness and shifting sands and change that's happening, what do you think it means to thrive as human beings on this planet? I know this is a question with no right answer. So this is just a question that I'm curious about.
the thing that comes to mind is that you have a place to stand, a perspective that can relativize the craziness. So it's going to be hard to thrive if you're like a cork in a turbulent sea and you're just bobbing up and down at the behest of whatever waves come your way from news media and fearmongers and all that. I get seasick very easily when I'm out in the ocean, so I don't go out in the ocean because all that bobbing and back and forth, you just can't quite get your bearings. And to me, it feels like that's what so many folks are struggling with right now is trying to understand what's real and what's not real, and how do I make sense out of all this when it's changing so fast and it feels so apocalyptic and doom and gloom. And then when they see the hopefulness that's all around them as well, we watch people act in ways that just are like, my gosh, that's the best in humanity. And we see the beauty and we hear good music, and it's like, how can all these things fit together? You got to have a place to stand that can hold that in some coherent kind of way. So I would say one of the things it means to thrive in this world right now is to find a way to generate and maintain inner coherence, which is heart-mind coherence. It's a sense of meaning-making coherence that when something shows up, I'm able to, I have a place for it somehow that tells me that gets hung over here on this hook. And how it relates to these other things. I'm not just completely at the whims of all this transiency. So that's one thing. I think it's going to be hard to thrive without that. That's a very deep question.
I'd love to hear you say a little more about, because you've used the word meaning making, like a meaning making system, meaning making framework, meaning making sensibility. And can you say a little more about that?
One of the things that makes us Homo sapiens, as opposed to Homo erectus or cave guy, is that we are able to. First of all, we have a sense of being conscious, and that gives us a sense of ego, a sense of self, a sense of I. And as an I, as a being who knows I exist, that makes me a subject and everything else then has the potential to be object. I try to understand what are those objects. Right? What does that mean? What is a wooden trunk with green fluffy things on top? What is that thing chasing after me that wants to eat me? What is my social group? All of those things, we're capable of defining those and holding them, like naming things. That's a very fundamental thing for Homo sapiens, to be able to give names, which means we've objectified them in a way. That's also a trap, by the way, but that's a much more sort of advanced thing, this sense of separateness between us and things. But suffice it to say that we are organizing things that we give names to. And, very quickly you watch kids, when they get to be 7 or 8, not even that, they start creating taxonomies of things. These are blue things, green things, red things. These are sharp things. These are rocks. These are leaves I've collected. And, we start those collection process, and all that is about making meaning and understanding connections between things and so forth. So, that's what I mean, and it gets more and more sophisticated, as we move through these stages of development. Are the structures we use to give meaning to something, to tell ourselves this has value, this has no value, that shifts with each stage of development.
So when you say having a place to stand,
Yeah,
and having that place to stand means having the ability to, when things are so turbulent, like when you cork in the ocean was a great metaphor, because it's exactly how I know so many people are feeling when I'm this cork in the ocean and I'm just bobbing, 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 and maybe something comes up and I go underwater and then I'm back up, and so I'm really have no stability and complete vulnerability. What does it mean then to have a place to stand? Like, what does that meaning making system give you?
yeah. Well, I think there are different meaning making systems that can speak to that from a philosophical point of view. A couple of the most obvious ones to me right now are Buddhism / Zen and Taoism, in which we go through meditation. I want to come back to the whole meditative thing, but we go into that inner space, and we go as deep as possible by letting go, letting go, letting go, letting ourselves fall almost into the singularity of our energy field. That is who we are, right? And then we discover things there. And in Zen, you would discover a nothingness that is absolutely full. You would discover in Buddhism generally a healthy detachment from outcome or from connections. In Taoism, that's who really understands that, right? That's the way. The Tao is that which cannot be spoken of. It's doing by not doing, and being by not being. Those things sound so confusing, but when I've tasted each of those various ways, as well as mystical frameworks of my own background, Christianity and so forth, I find that there's a place behind the eye. There's a place behind the surface, sort of the manifested Dave, that is a witness to that manifested Dave, to that ego. It's not ego. You could call it more of a true self, but then that true self exists, and who is it that's watching the true self? It's almost like there's pure awareness behind everything. However you arrive at that place of perspective that helps you realize you are not really fully, you are a lot more than Renee Moorefield, Dave Schrader. Bob Anderson says that's just our local address. We're a lot more than that. Once we, that's a place to stand. That's a place from which you can observe what's going on in the world. You can observe the ocean that you're bobbing in and realize you're the ocean as well as the cork. You can realize that you're absolutely safe. There is the body may be destroyed, but we exist outside the body. We think. We don't even need our brains to think. I mean, we're so much more expansive from an energetic, even, I don't know what there's energy, neuro energetic kind of fields. But I mean, I think that for me, like understanding that gives me a place to stand. Now, you don't have to be as esoteric as I am to have a place to stand. You can say, here are my values. This is who I am. This is what I stand for, right? And therefore, this is what I'm willing to live for, and this is what I'm willing to die for. You can do that at every stage of development. You can do that from a reactive stage of development, from a socialized self. You can do that from a creative stage of development, from a self-authored self. You can know yourself well enough to go, this is what I care about. And don't violate this boundary. Don't violate this value. Without a place to stand, you don't really have that. So that's what I kind of mean by that. You've got a level of solidity to who you think you are, and you can stand in that. You're willing to stand as that, right?
Yeah, there's so many things that you are provoking in my body mind system right now. One of them is one of the paths that's been most important for me personally is the philosophy and practice of yoga. And the asana practice, the physical practice is yes, a part of it, but it's really more of all of the rest of it.
Mm.
Breath work and the meditation work and some of the world views that I learned through that. And a little story, and you brought it up with the ocean, that I think is just such a beautiful metaphor speaking to what you're talking about is in the ocean, we think we're the wave.
Yeah.
We are the wave. You are the wave. You are the wave hitting the beach. You are the wave going back out. You are the wave. But you are also inherently a part of the ocean. So you are both and. There's something about shifting into that both and that I can be an expression as Renee Moorefield, and I can also be this expression as unified, connected, interdependent part of a whole. So there's the wholeness of me, this wholeness of this being, which you've already described as, yes, there's the local address, which I love that, Bob Anderson. Yes, there's the local address, but then there's also the, I don't know what the energetic address. I mean, there's the spiritual address. There's the different address that even when I'm doing any kind of assessment work with someone, for any assessment, I like to tell people to draw a dotted line around the results, like a dotted line around the circle, because nothing can absolutely capture the mystery, the beauty, the multidimensionality of you. And part of our own practice, and you were already saying this, so I'm just repeating it, is to see ourselves as bigger than we see ourselves. And to see ourselves as bigger than anything any way we identify. So that's one. But then the next practice that I heard you saying, as far as taking a stand so that we can make sense of what's going on in the world at any point in time, especially this time, because this is where we live right now, but at any point in time, is to also know that we are part of a much bigger whole. We are connected genetically, we are connected, I believe, spiritually, we are connected energetically, we are connected in our nervous systems, we are connected on so many levels. We're connected socially. If you drive to a stop sign and you stop, you have made silent agreements with other people that you're going to follow, that you're going to obey so that the society can work. So we're connected in so many ways. And I am appreciating already in this conversation, you didn't say the word interdependent or oneness, but you were already talking about that shift that I think is so important. And I personally am hoping, my aspiration for us is that all the disruption we're feeling provokes these questions within us, like the desire to build these capacities with each other, within ourselves and with each other.
Yeah, I'm with you. Yes. Love it. So your yoga, the deep philosophy and perspective on the world, that you used the term worldview, I mean, it helps you make meaning out of what's going on around you. You put it in that context.
It's my place to stand. That when you
Yeah.
say place to stand, I understand it physically because when I sit or stand on a yoga mat, I've just done it for so long with a again, not as an exercise, a physical exercise, even though yes, it can be that, but as this is a commitment to a way of living, a way of being in the world. And I know that I've been on that mat so many times that when I'm not on that mat and I skip my practice, which I do, I go through phases where I'm skipping that practice. When I return to the mat, I can literally feel
Oh,
this whole world, come
mhm.
into me, which is like a really heavy, those heavy weighted blankets.
Oh, yeah.
It
Yeah.
feels so comforting. It's like, it's like that. It's
Yeah.
refuge. I mean, it's called refuge for a reason
Yeah.
because it's a safe harbor,
Well,
you know,
that's well
for your
said.
nervous system.
Yeah.
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 So you were going to tell me another thing that it means to thrive.
Well, I'll give you, you just sparked another thought about a place to stand, if you will, in this culture, in this world that we're in right now. Um, it may be that, like most of the world in our Western world has been trained to be producers and consumers.
Mhm.
This is the cultural faith that we inherit. Your job is to consume as much as possible and produce a whole bunch of stuff, and GDP becomes the idol. Stock price, all that sort of stuff. Do your job, do your role, go shopping. You remember when the pandemic hit, or what? There was some point that we're
Yep. Go shop.
go
Yeah.
shopping, save the economy, make everything good. Um, and so, unless you have found another way to hold the world, to make meaning of the world and yourself than just being what society would train you to be, you get swept along with it. You have no differentiation, no sense of perspective. And the metaphor that came to mind was when I used to guide rafting trips on whitewater. And you know, I would tell people that unless your raft is moving faster than the current or slower than the current, you have no control over it. This is a raft, right? It doesn't have a keel. It just bobs like a cork. So if you want to go left or go right as you're moving downstream toward the rapid, you're going to have to pick up the pace or slow it way down. But if you just stay letting the water push you and then try to go left, you'll turn the boat, but the boat will keep moving this way,
Mm,
straight toward whatever you don't want to hit.
mm.
And to me, that's like saying, do you have a way of seeing things that is different enough from the popular cultural way of seeing things that you're able to step and see it from a vantage point? Otherwise, we end up making meaning out of how comfortable am I? What's my car like? Is it better than yours? You know, do I wear nice clothes? Do I do nice vacations? We just start comparing ourselves within that system. And that's a way of making meaning. I'm not so sure it's a way of thriving, a way of surviving, perhaps, but it's a pretty egoic way and it's fairly anemic. So it doesn't provide a whole lot of basis for thriving, I don't think. So the other angle I was going to just mention are the practices. We just started to talk about it with yoga. So whatever your practice is, I remember when I was at living school, on day one, they said almost all of you have practices. If you don't, find your practice. This is if you get anything out of these 2 years of work together, find your practice and practice your practice. They were almost like practice agnostic. We don't care what your practice is. Find a practice that helps open up your inner world and do it. Right. So I think that that's critical to thriving. All of those take a discipline. Um,
Well, all of them, if we're talking about the framework, you and I are skilled in, connected by. One's leadership circle profile, and the other is the Thriving Leader Framework, or Be Well, Lead Well Pulse. In the second framework, all of those can be practices. Those are all pathways, they're all sets of resources. They can all be practices.
I'll be practice, right?
Practices. But I am appreciating the rule of thumb of find your practice, because we're so unique. You know, we are all the ocean, but we're also the wave. So you're so unique. To find the practice and then the practice your practice.
Yeah.
You know, really, I have been thinking a lot lately about. So, you know, you and I have talked a lot about thriving. Thriving can be a work you do to create a framework of meaning and guide your life and work. So your vision, your values, your purpose, all these things create the conditions for you to make decisions, take actions that are really aligned and help you have this sense of coherence. Thriving can be also in the moment, the shift you make in the moment. Yeah. You have a moment where you're feeling dysregulated, you notice it, and you go, okay, what do I need to do right now to consciously shift so that I can show up in the moment? But it's also been hitting me lately, kind of a third leg of thriving as, how do we make it our default? Because so much of our conversation in the world is about dysregulation and reactivity and stress as our default response. These are some of our default responses. So how can, when you say practice your practice, to me, that's like the road of saying, you keep practicing your practice so that a situation shows up and you naturally respond from this place of deep well-being, from this place of deep coherence, rather than a place of reactivity or fear or separation, as you were bringing up earlier. And that, to me, is when you said practice your practice, you reminded me of how important that feels right now.
It really does. Yeah. Yeah. You're also reminding me of stuff we used to talk about with, you know, leaders, about how do you change your mind? And literally I'd talk about neural pathways and myelinization of nerves, and how, you know, more current, more electrochemical interactions in your brain will travel across well-used paths, right? So as you practice, as you reframe and reframe and reframe and reframe till it becomes the frame, then what you're doing is you're disusing or letting atrophy those neural pathways that might be, you know, come out of the amygdala, but you're creating new pathways and myelinizing those so that it's more conductivity in the brain to help that become your default, right? And that's why it's practice over a long period of time, you know. And I love the studies that you know more about this than I do with monks, you know, when they just put on the EEG, and, you know, they'd say, okay, start to meditate, and you just watch the brain waves go. Wow, man, if I could do that in that meeting that I was in earlier this morning, that would have been awesome, you know?
That like harmonization that's like, yeah. Wow. Yeah.
Exactly, right? So that's the beauty of that kind of practice, or like a practice of wonder, you know, if you've got a practice where you just notice the light coming through the skylight on the wall and that weird diamond shape and the variation of shades that coming, it's like that came 93 million miles, the wall like that. Huh, isn't that amazing? And you just start noticing what's around you, and there's so much to be like grateful for and to be in wonder and awe about, but you have to start practicing seeing it.
Yeah. It really does take a way of seeing and a way of experiencing the world.
Yeah. Now, there was something else I thought about, if I can interrupt you.
Go for it. Yeah, please.
And it's a question, and you probably have a good, well thought out answer to this one. But if I am pursuing thriving for the sake of me thriving, to me, it seems a bit me-centered. I want to thrive. I could make it sound more noble by saying I need to thrive for the sake of those around me so that I can take care of them and love them and be the best self I can be for them. Or I could, and I don't know if this is possible, but I could let go of the idea of thriving after I've developed some practices and so forth, just sort of a stage of development thing in a way. And now I've just completely, in the words of the Apostle Paul talking about Jesus using the word kenosis, just pour myself out in love.
Mm-hmm.
And there's just new research I read just recently that came out about altruism and well-being. And we've all known that there's a connection there from our own lives and from other research, but it was like another data point saying the more we get off of ourselves, the more we actually end up thriving.
I totally agree. I think you and I talked a long time ago about mapping out the stages of development, stages of consciousness, and thriving at those stages. When we talk about thriving as the map that we created that looked at the different science-based factors to thriving, already in that is built in what do you want to serve? Who do you want to serve? What is bigger than you? So that's already in that purposefully, because even at whatever stage, I'm not going to name the stages, but even at the everyday life where I feel like I am the wave, I'm going to keep using that metaphor.
Yeah.
Everyday life where I'm just feeling like I'm the wave, and that's how I feel right now. Even there, the extent to which I understand or even consider the consequences of my actions on other people
Mm-hmm.
does matter. It actually does. When I'm thinking about that, when I'm more compassionate, when I'm more empathic, when I am more attuned to other people's feelings and more sensitive, while I have good boundaries as well, it actually does make me feel good to do kind acts for the neighbor. I mean, these pro-social behaviors in science, like at the everyday wave level of our individuality, also is a huge pathway for thriving. Volunteering, huge pathway for our thriving. And then, of course, I agree with what you're talking about. Thriving then becomes, is it even the right word? When we start to realize or start to center our gravity, for lack of a better word, center ourselves in more of the ocean. Yeah. And that becomes the predominant experience we're having in our day. Then thriving, the definition of that becomes really different. Maybe it is just the pouring out of love. Maybe it is this the easing of suffering with people, maybe for people. Maybe it is when you see someone who has been really doing these deep practices for many, many years, like a monk or an ascetic, that they're literally sitting and being and knowing that sitting and being alone
Exactly.
is affecting
More than anything else.
Is affecting the consciousness of our planet. So I'm not the one that can say definitively how it all maps out, but my sense is that the more we are centered in an experience of knowing ourselves as deeply connected to all other beings, deeply connected to the planet, the more we realize that just by being who we are, it is having a ripple effect. And again, when we go back to science, and I'm going to go back to the wave, go back to the science, go back to the wave, we know that right now, what's happening with my nervous system is what is affecting your nervous system, and vice versa. Our breath rates are probably starting to entrain. Our brain
even virtually, even from
even as the wave.
Yeah.
Like the word connected works when you're the wave. When you're the ocean, it's oneness.
Yeah.
So it's really this unified field. And I can say personally, I don't live there. In my day-to-day life, I am often like doing my wave thing. I'm doing my wave thing. And then I'm doing my practices to remind myself, whether it is looking at a meal I'm eating and going, I feel so grateful for this.
Yeah.
There's a moment of connection, of yes, you're part of this and this is part of you. Or whether it's talking to a neighbor and just deciding I want to show up really well for this person, or whether it's being on the mat or whatever it is. So I'm having my moments, but I can't say that I'm living there, consciously.
Yes,
I think we're all living there, by the way. I think that's our stuff.
well, that's it right there. Yes, I think that is the base condition. That is
And it is then the noticing.
that the whole journey of life is noticing,
Yeah.
waking up to what is actually really true already true. All the mystics have told us this from every place, right? And so this is partly why I'm always so attracted to the pursuit of that deepest truth and meaning making and a place to stand and all that. I think once we really discover the nature of things, the nature of reality, what flows naturally from that is compassion. What flows naturally from that are acts of kindness. What flows naturally from that is a sense of interpenetrative connection. That emerges from that view of the way things are.
Yeah.
And so when I got the nature of the holographic organization of the universe, Jude Curve stuff, it was like, oh, of course. And then you naturally feel in love because that's what we actually are, is interconnected, attractive forces that hold everything to everything else. And so, wow. So once you get that, life becomes easier because we're not fighting false views of things. We're not fighting our egoic selfishness as much. Thriving flows from that kind of inquiry, that kind of awakening. So
That
realization, right? So anything that can help us to realize what is real, touch with the deepest realities, structures of life, is going to help us thrive and help us face into, stuff like what we're up to in the world today.
So for you, how does that realization help you make meaning of what's happening in the world today?
One thing is that my sense of where I'm standing gives me hope that doesn't fade. It's a deep hope that can carry us beyond our own stupidity and idiocy and evil. That love is stronger than death. I know that. Not I kind of wish it was true. At some sort of really knowing knownness, like I know that that's true. So I forget that though, I read the news and I forget. And then like you said so well earlier, I remind myself again of what is true and drop in. And that gets easier and easier. So that's one thing is hope. And then the other thing is how do we make meaning out of the craziness? I can tell myself a number of things that I think are all true. One is we are more interconnected as a planet because of the internet and because of instant communication than we ever have been. So now with a volume of complexity we have to keep track of, and the speed of information transfer is beyond any time in human history, right? So collectively we haven't developed a capacity for this. So, I doubt individually we have either. As Jennifer Garvey Berger says, create simple solutions for complex problems, simple stories to explain complex problems. They're by definition, they're inadequate for meaning making. I'm also coming around to I can't remember whether it was Kabir who said that darkness is an unlit wick. It's just the lack of the light. It's not a substance in and of itself. Evil, I think, is an effect, not a cause, because the nature of things is good. So evil is an aberration. It's an effect of ignorance and sleepwalking into big decisions, clumsily making egoic-based decisions that cause people to be afraid and, do all the things around tyranny and so forth. And yet it may be that we discover in the long run that everything is absolutely innocent and all of our desires at their very, very foundation are guiltless. Even somebody as asinine as Trump, he's trying to be who he's always thought he should be, find out who he really is, that his father never let him see. He's so broken from his experiences that this is the only way he knows to try and be a good human being, is to amass power and prove to himself he's of worth. Well, knowing you're of worth is not a bad thing. That's a good thing. The way of doing it is disastrous. And yet the underlying urge is a natural part of being human. And so I want to have compassion for him as well. That's an easy one to forget. That's really easy to forget.
Yeah, well, there's a lot coming at you and coming at all of us to help you forget.
So I think it really is about once if we can grasp onto a place to stand that really does tap into the very nature of the divine holy energy that is all things, the quantum fields, and that we are the whole quantum fields. I mean, all 15 of them, and to infinity, are simply a energetic manifestation of God. And how can we be anything that God is not? We're made of God. We're made of love. God is love. So therefore, when we screw up and when we hurt others and when we damage others and we act in evil ways, we just have gotten lost and we've fallen asleep and we don't know who we really are, right? Holding that makes it easier for me to forgive. But what confuses me though is, what do I do with my anger? Sometimes I find myself going, I'm so angry about this and the damage it's doing to people. So I've got to allow myself to experience that in the nature of thriving. Thriving is not just airy-fairy. Thriving is living full on.
Right.
And so that means experience that anger. And in fact, one poet once said, it was John O'Donohue who asked for the blessing of converting my anxiety into anger. That was the prayer. It's to take that incoherent, anxious energy and focus it, boom, into something that has got a purpose. It's more sophisticated than I am to say I can handle my anger and do it with compassion and forgiveness simultaneously. No, I think I'm probably at my greatest risk of losing my shit when I'm angry and forgetting all about who I really am.
I hear you. I really hear you. I mean, when something feels so violated, then that's for me when anger shows up and shows up really quickly. And I'm also asking myself a similar question, which is, okay, I'm angry, and it is appropriate to experience because there are things being violated and people being really harmed. And how do I want to channel it? From where do I want to channel it? Do I want to channel it as the wave? Or do I want to channel it knowing I'm part of the ocean? Because anger is energy and it's powerful. It's so powerful. So like to channel that kind of power, I think is fabulous. Toward what end? From where and toward what end?
Well, I think that's the and we have to go to the heart of love, find out the end, which would modulate the expression of the anger, not dampen it, but focus it. I think there's part of thriving, which is the courage to face into that work while I'm on the journey. It's about pursuing what matters as opposed to avoiding or trying to fix what's broken. I do both, but to only try to deal with stuff going on around us and just kind of keep it from getting out of control is not enough. It really isn't. It's not enough for you. It's not enough for me. It's not enough for anyone. We have to have a vision of what are we about?
Where do we stand collectively?
Where do we stand collectively, right?